inflation and increasing housing prices, it can be extremely difficult to afford the cost of living in California. Such high prices demand a dependable job, which often requires a college degree from a reputable institution. But the overwhelming cost of tuition at these institutions can leave many students feeling like success is unattainable. Despite what you might think, however, colleges are not entirely at fault for this. This is just one example of the many issues that come as a direct result of the California state budget cuts. Today, I will explain to you the relationship between these budget cuts and the disparities in academic opportunity. Then, I will present a possible solution, and finally, I will tell you how you can help contribute. Colleges are underfunded, forcing them to raise their tuition and prioritize programs and students that are going to generate the most income. According to the Daily California's 2014 article by Lilia Vega, the UC Board of Regents stated back in 1868 that admission and tuition shall be free to all residents of the state. However, we have seen that this has definitely not been the case. Ever since, there has been a continual trend in budget cuts from the state. You can see that in the 1960s, tuition was almost non-existent. By the mid-1970s, only 18% of the budget was being used for higher education. That was decreased to 12% in 2016 and 2017, and now this year it has been proposed to be decreased to 7.6%. So I will provide a few examples of what this looks like for the inequalities in these institutions and how this affects students. First example is the disparity between student athletes and non-student athletes. College sports are big business for institutions of higher education. They generate a lot of income. This results in them prioritizing athletes over non-athletes and their programs over other academic programs. The Sports Journal's 2012 article by Christopher Soffici and Robert Pellegrino states that despite the NCAA's prohibition of special treatment for athletes, it has been a continual problem for many years now. We can see that even now, with the introduction of name, image, likeness, or NIL, that it's becoming a bigger problem. As college athletes can become full-fledged celebrities with substantial paychecks, bringing in more attention to themselves and to their universities. This is going to cause the institutions to prioritize them even more than before. So my next example is the inequality between STEM programs and the humanities. So especially now, we're conditioned to choose majors that are going to get us a good job, that are going to give us high pay. And STEM majors are the ones going to pay the most money. So these are prioritized over the humanities. Especially for myself, I'm an English major. When touring universities, I saw that a lot of these humanities buildings were outdated by several years. But then you go walk across the quad, and the math and science buildings are big and new. They're being worked on right now or within the last year or two. And you could just really see where the funding was going in these institutions. According to BBC WorkLife's 2022 article by Amanda Ruggery, learning for the sake of learning is a beautiful thing, but given the high tuition cost, it's no wonder that most of us need a degree to pay off in a more concrete way. So this means that not only are people seeking these STEM majors to have a more comfortable living when they graduate college, they actually have to have these jobs in order to pay off their significant college debts. And then my final example is one that we discuss more often, and that's of race, gender, and income. So now obviously income is a problem because the higher income bracket you're in, the better the school you can afford with these high tuition costs. So no matter if you're qualified to go to these institutions, but perhaps you don't have money, that means that you're not going to be able to have as many opportunities as people with money. This also relates to race. No matter their income, people of minorities are often in neighborhoods of lower income, and they have less opportunity that way. And segregation still is existent, and schools, and so they're not getting as much preparation for college. According to Urban Institute's 2020 article by Tomas Maneras and Kelia Washington, deep and pervasive segregation in K-12 schools means that Black and Hispanic students have fewer resources and less experienced teachers to prepare them for rigorous college coursework. They're less prepared and they're less likely to receive scholarships for if they are like in between income brackets, and especially if they're not prepared academically, they're not as likely to stay in their programs. In addition, colleges are not held as responsible if they don't have the money by the government over their head. They're probably more prone to bias, such as nepotism and based on race and gender, if they're not receiving money from the government. The government has less leverage over them. So now that I have discussed some of these issues, I will propose a possible solution to the problem. So implementing a policy to set a minimum percentage of the state budget to higher education would prevent future budget cuts, and it would also allow these colleges to have the money they need to provide equal education to everyone. History says that we can do 18%, which would be much better than the 7.6% today. It would more than double it. This would show us a substantial change. I know you might be thinking, how do we ensure that these colleges use the money responsibly and do not abuse it? Well, many of the schools in California have to answer to the UC Board of Regents. They're the ones who distribute the funds in each university, but as far as the ones that are not, we can enact stipulations in the funding agreements that ensure that the colleges don't abuse the money. So now that I have presented this solution, I'll tell you how you can make it possible. So the two main ways to make this possible are by reaching out to Governor Newsom and by reaching out to the UC Board of Regents. By writing letters and signing petitions to and addressing them to Governor Newsom, we can present the urgency of the situation to him. He proposes the budget every year. He's the one who can make a difference. Especially if we can persuade Governor Newsom of this, it will help us in persuading the UC Board of Regents. So by writing letters to the UC Board of Regents, we can persuade them to distribute the funds in a way that will give equal opportunity to all students. So today I've informed you about the several academic inequalities that come as a result of underfunding in institutions of higher education. First, I explained the problem. Second, I proposed a solution, which is setting a minimum amount from the state budget that goes to these institutions. And finally, I told you how you can help by writing letters to the governor and the UC Board of Regents. So if we have enough help, we can make this a reality. So let's do something about it and improve the development of our society.